New Mexico is a land of stories, myths, and legends. The unexplained and the unexplored. I'm Chad Brummett, and we are exploring the unique and unusual world of New Mexico Strange. Hello and welcome to this edition of New Mexico Strange. I'm Chad Brummett. Thank you for joining us. And throughout our journeys through the paranormal, we have spoken to a lot of skeptics, we've spoken to scientists, we've spoken to journalists about various ghost stories and strange things. Today, we are really fortunate to speak to someone that, first of all, I didn't know we had so many connections. The more that I got to know Darla Van Winkle, who is joining us today, I actually interviewed your mother a couple of years ago, who won our Remarkable Women campaign in 2022. Teresa Van Winkle, a very remarkable woman, by the way, so give my love to her and everyone down in Tularosa. But our kids also go to the same school.
Yes, they do.
And we're also really into the paranormal. So it's awesome to have you here, Darla. And we're talking today with you specifically because you have a lot of experience and a lot of instances. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Chad, honestly, I grew up experiencing phenomena in my house, ghosts. I didn't know that other people didn't experience these things. To me, it wasn't paranormal. It was just normal.
Right.
And it wasn't until I got older that I realized that other people didn't have the type of experiences that I did.
Yeah. How old were you, like when you first started sort of sensing otherworldly things or paranormal phenomena? As you said, at that point, you were probably just like, you're just eating cereal. You're just talking to the boy in the corner, or you know.
Yes, it was like that.
How do you remember how old you were?
I was probably 3 or 4.
No kidding.
Yes.
Wow.
And I was seeing another little girl in my house that looked similar to me, but it wasn't me. And I have an older sister, and I knew that it wasn't her that I was seeing, and my older sister didn't see her.
Was it like a full body?
Yes.
Like a full manifestation?
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
It was as though there was another child in my home.
Really?
And it wasn't until I was 20 that I actually heard more of my own origin story. And it absolutely explained why I was seeing this extra child.
Really?
Yes.
Can you share a little bit about that? What did you learn that opened that up?
When I was 20, I came home from college. I went to the College of Santa Fe, and I went home to Alamogordo. And I was sitting at a Mexican restaurant with my folks. And out of nowhere, my mom told me about something that happened to her when she was pregnant with me. That her and my dad were on a fishing trip in Ruidoso, and that she started bleeding. And it was definitely an emergency situation. So my dad rushed my mom to the hospital, and the hospital informed her that she had indeed had a miscarriage, but that she had been pregnant with twins.
Wow.
And so she went home to grieve for a week.
Sure.
And then she went back in for the D&C procedure. And when she went back in, a doctor detected a heartbeat. And it was faint, but it was there. And so they still advised my mom to continue with the procedure, and she refused. And she said, nope, if my baby is fighting, we're sticking with this.
Right.
And so when I was born, it was about 4 months. I was about 4 months gestated when this incident happened.
Wow.
And so for the other 5 months, she wasn't sure what was going to happen when I was born, if I would be okay. She was informed by doctors that I would not be okay. So when I was born, I was deemed a medical miracle.
Wow.
Because I was fine. I was not impaired in any way. But the doctors did say that I did, in fact, die. But I somehow came back.
Really?
Yes.
So you had a near-death experience before birth?
In utero, yes.
That is incredible.
And so as a child growing up, I see whom I believe to be my sister.
Wow.
Who was lost during that time.
Was there a sense that you had, and I mean, because obviously it's such a young age, there's, relationships we don't really know. Did you have a sense of like closeness with this child that you were seeing, that it may be more than just a friend, that there was something special about this?
I felt
this
as though
person?
she was supposed to be there, and I wanted I wanted to play with her. I wanted to know her more, and she was just a bit elusive. I would see her, and then she'd go away. And I would see her, and she'd go away.
Wow.
So I never got to have, a sit-down exchange with her. I would just see her.
You would just see her. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking before we started rolling. You have a number of instances that have happened in your life, and you were saying one of the first instances where you knew that you may have a special sense of things. Was that the instance you were talking about?
Yes.
Or was there was okay.
That was my earliest recollection of seeing somebody that apparently only I could see.
Wow. That is incredible. Let's talk about some of the other experiences that you have had, some of the other, we say ghost stories, but, oftentimes for the person there, it really is an experience. It's not a story, it's not like a piece of fiction. For you, it is a very real experience. Share a couple of these experiences that you have had.
Well, one of my first jobs was the art gallery director for the Fine Art Gallery of the College of Santa Fe.
Okay.
And that was a course in Santa Fe on campus. And I had 3 work studies, and we just had this glorious gallery that we got to put shows on, and we'd have big openings, and together as a team we would hang the shows. And the second show we had, it was the sculpture show. And it was largely attended. We had hundreds of people in our gallery that evening. And then when it was over, I went and locked the exterior doors. They're definitely locked. There's big metal doors. They're locked. And then my staff was cleaning the dishes in the kitchen, which was down a little hallway. Mm-hmm. And I just went out into the gallery to check and see if there were any stray dishes. And as I walked in, I saw one of my work study students, Katie. I saw her clear as day walk through the gallery into the supply closet. Mm-hmm. And I followed her in and said, "Oh, Katie, can you?" And as soon as I walked in, there was no one in there. Wow. And it was a full body, absolutely could not see through, just full body apparition. And then I just stopped in the supply closet and I replayed the incident in my head. Mm-hmm. And I went, wait a minute. Katie has a pixie cut. The girl I just saw had shoulder length hair. Okay. And Katie was wearing like a strapless dress, and this girl had little cap sleeves. So I instantly knew that was not Katie.
Right.
But I knew that I saw her, and I so fully believed that it was my assistant that I was talking to her, and I followed her in there. And then I called out to Katie and the rest of my staff, and they came running, and I told them what I just saw, and we were all startled.
Sure.
It was about 10 o'clock at night, and we'd had a long day. So we were all just ready to, like, that's enough. We're going to go ahead and leave now. And so we all together went back into the kitchen because now I kind of didn't want to be alone out there.
Completely understandable.
And so we finished up with the dishes. And then I went into the main gallery again to turn off the lights. Mm-hmm. And when I stepped into the gallery, we have concrete floors in there. Okay. I could smell something. And I looked on the floor, and there was a lit cigarette sitting on the concrete floor.
Oh my gosh.
And it had lipstick on it.
Really?
Yes. And I called out to my staff to get in here again.
Right.
And we all just looked at this lit cigarette. Mm-hmm. And it was about halfway smoked. None of us smoke. Mm-hmm. And I guarantee you nobody had come into the building. The doors were very locked and secure. Right. So I just said, okay, we're done. Yeah. And I took my foot and I put out the cigarette and I picked it up and put it in some water, and we all got out of there. Was
it holy water? Did you put it just to be safe? My gosh, that's incredible.
It really was. And I had witnesses too, to the cigarette, of course. We all saw it. So.
Wow. That is unreal. Did you ever, during your tenure there, did you have other experiences at the time?
Oh, I did.
Okay, so this wasn't an isolated incident.
I absolutely. When I went, when I attended the College of Santa Fe as a student, it's a notoriously haunted campus.
Is it? Okay.
It is. The cafeteria at one time was the morgue, and they never changed. Like, there's this one large door and one small door, and the larger door was to accommodate the gurney. And this long hallway had 2 rows of tile for the wheels of the bed to roll down.
Wow.
And they never changed it.
Ooh. Ooh, yeah. Maybe some things on the checklist of if we're going to repurpose a
Yes.
morgue.
Yes, maybe have it
Take
not
all of
still
those
look
out.
like a morgue.
Yeah. Wow, that is incredible. What are some of the other experiences that you've had in your life?
You know, my husband and I both have had experiences.
Okay.
That's true. We were definitely compatible in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
That we both understood that this is just something that we experience in this life.
Mm-hmm.
We have 2 children. When let's see, we had our house built, but that doesn't really mean anything. And I don't believe that having an old house versus a new house has much bearing in whether or not it's going to be haunted or have
Okay.
something in it. I think that it can be the person and it can be the land. You know, there is no new land.
Right.
So
That's true.
everything
Good
that you
point.
build has been built on top of something else before. So we had our house built. Our daughter was 1 when we moved into our new home. And this thing started happening where I would fix a bottle on the counter. And then as I would turn to put the milk or the juice back in the fridge, I would turn around and Madeline would be walking off carrying the bottle. And I just kind of thought, wow, I'm sleep deprived.
Yeah.
I don't remember giving it to her, but clearly she has it. So I just chalked it up to I'm tired.
Sure.
And I didn't recall giving it to her.
Sure.
And then I would have her strapped in her high chair, like secured in the high chair. And I'd be across the kitchen and I would fix a bottle. And again, I would turn to put up whatever I was putting up. And then I would turn around and she was holding the bottle in the high chair. And again, I thought, okay, I need some sleep. I have no other explanation for this.
Yeah.
But it kept happening.
Yeah.
And I never said anything to my husband about it.
Okay.
And then one day I came home from work and Jason had been, clearly he was a little frazzled. And he just said, Darla, the strangest thing keeps happening. I will fix a bottle. I'll have it sitting on the counter. I turn around and Madeline's walking off with it. So then we got to have this big, what? Moment because we were both experiencing the same thing, but we hadn't communicated about it. And so
That's amazing.
And then when we had our son, Jude, same thing.
Really?
The exact same thing would happen. We would fix a bottle and turn around and he's walking off with it when there's no way he could reach up that high on the counter to get it himself. Or again, being strapped in the high chair, he would have it when we know that we did not give it to him.
Yeah.
So we weren't scared by this at all. We just thought, well, someone's giving us a little help.
Sure. Right.
And I don't want to assume that it was a grandparent or anything like that. I feel like I'm always careful to not assume that you know who or what an entity is.
Sure.
Because I don't think we really do.
Sure.
And I think that you need to be cautious with assuming you know what something is because you could be wrong. So years later, when Jude was about 4, it was just a summer evening. My whole family was watching TV in our living room. And out of absolutely nowhere, Jude stands up and he said, "Oh, look, there's the invisible man." And I immediately thought about all of these instances.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, where is he? And Jude said, he's right there in front of you. And I said, okay. And I could not perceive anything. I couldn't tell that anything was there. So it was someone that Jude could see that I could not see. And I am very sensitive, but he wasn't, we weren't tuned into each other. So I couldn't see him. But Jude just said, he's right in front of you. And I said, do you know who he is? And Jude said, he actually thought for a moment. Jude got quiet and thought for a moment. And he went, no, I don't know who he is. But he likes to give kids bottles. And And
he was a baby.
He was a baby when that was happening.
My
And
gosh.
he had, of course, not had bottles for years. And then he said it that clearly.
Did you ever communicate? I mean, I imagine at 4 years old, you're not going to be like, when you were a baby, these bottles would just, so correct me if I'm wrong, would have no way of knowing.
He would have no way of knowing. I didn't talk to him about such things because I didn't want to scare him. But at the same time, I really tried to listen if my kids were telling me about something in the house that perhaps they could see and experience that maybe I couldn't.
Yeah.
Because that was my experience growing up, is that I did see and experience things that other members of my household couldn't.
Yeah.
And now I definitely talk to my parents about such things. You know, we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
They've had experiences. I've had experiences. My dad's had experiences in my house.
Really?
So,
Wow.
yes.
And that's, one thing, again, kind of going back to your mother, who does exceptional work for people fighting cancer in the Tularosa Basin in Alamogordo. A lot of people probably downwinders that, are dealing with generational issues of cancer. So she really is sort of in this realm of dealing with people that are fighting for their lives and, bringing them care and comfort. So she too, and your brother, they have all had experiences.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow. Okay.
Well, if you think about Einstein's theory, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It just changes form.
Yeah.
And so
that's a good point.
I absolutely believe that we go on, that other entities go on, that energy stays, it continues.
Yeah.
In one form or another.
Yeah. Do you feel that certain people, because again, there are, as we said, we have all the skeptics that are going to say, well,
absolutely.
It's this, and this. Do you feel that there are certain people that really do have a greater sensitivity to, I don't want to say paranormal, but for lack of a better way of putting it, paranormal occurrences, ghostly realms, and being able to sort of feel spirits?
Absolutely. I feel like you think of it in terms of a radio. It's like we are each our own little radio, and we have different channels that we can tune into. And certain channels, you'll detect certain sounds or certain entities, and it's a matter of what you tune into and what you focus on. I do believe that some people just have a more sensitive radio.
Yeah.
And they're more able to easily detect these entities. And some people simply can't.
Yeah.
And I really don't think that, like at this point in my life, I'm not trying to convince anybody that my experiences are real or that what I see is real. I know that it is. And other people are free to believe what they want to believe and what they feel is real to them. Absolutely.
Right. Has your daughter experienced similar occurrences?
Oh, yeah.
She has as well. Okay.
Oftentimes, these things run in families.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly sounds like it, especially with your family.
Yeah. My parents have experienced paranormal. I've experienced paranormal. So has my sister. And our children experience it too. They've definitely had some interesting tales too.
Really?
So.
Now, do they all live here? Does your sister live here in New Mexico?
No, she lives in Illinois.
In Illinois. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think too, we've spoken about this with a number of our guests on New Mexico Strange, and curious about your take on this as well. And you had mentioned something about the fact that, again, there's no new land. Yeah. Right? You may be able to build a new house, but the land that you were sitting on sits on generations upon generations upon generations.
Ancient.
Do you think New Mexico in particular, because of some of the things that have happened here, there has been a lot of bloodshed in this state with, colonization coming in, colonizers moving in, Native Americans being murdered, and then just continued throughout the years, throughout the decades and centuries. Do you think New Mexico in particular maybe has an elevated vibration, for lack of a better way of putting it?
Absolutely. I absolutely do. Yeah. I live in Volterra, which is South Wantabo.
Okay.
When you're approaching my neighborhood, there's this corralled off space. There's this wooden fence that looks similar to a corral.
Okay.
And it's on the west side of the street. Years ago, I had the fortune to speak with a cultural anthropologist from UNM, and I asked him about Volterra and about that corral, because honestly, I didn't know what it was.
You don't
And-
normally see that in a, an urban neighborhood.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
absolutely. You go down this bridge. There's a big arroyo right there, and it comes up, and the road kind of curves, and you see this little corral right there. And then you
Okay.
keep driving, and there's houses. There's houses right up against this fenced-off space.
Okay.
But when we bought our home, we didn't know what that fenced-off space was. No one told us, and this cultural anthropologist said, "Oh, I know exactly where you live. That site is called Cuatro Cerro Site, and it was the largest Native American settlement in Albuquerque.
Really?
That there was a structure there at one time that had 200 rooms and housed a very large population of Native Americans.
Really?
And that is a sacred site, and there was a miscommunication with the developer about how large of a site would be sectioned off for homes versus what would be held sacred with that fenced corral.
Mm-hmm.
So it was supposed to be 300 meters from the epicenter of that site that would
Okay.
be fenced off, but that somehow it only became 300 feet.
Holy
Yes.
moly.
And
wow.
of course, my husband and I did not know this when we decided to build a home there.
Sure.
And where our home is directly west of this site.
Really?
And so when I spoke with this anthropologist, he said, I can 100% verify that your home is on Native American burial ground.
Really?
And
wow.
my husband and I just said, that makes sense.
Yeah.
We would not have bought there had we known this history. It doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And we want to honor the heritage and
Sure.
culture of our state, and we would not have meant to trespass in such a way.
Mm-hmm. Has there been something that you have gone through with that knowledge of acknowledging what it was, making appeasement or, some sort of, I don't know what you do in that thing, but just, saying that, that as you said, we honor and acknowledge
Yes.
where you were sitting.
We did, we buried blessed metals in the four corners of our property,
Okay.
and we routinely do cleansings of our house. Yes.
Okay.
I do the sage, I do the salt, just to try to keep our space peaceful.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Try to keep our space peaceful.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, my kids, they're notorious. They'll say, Mom, is this place haunted? And my answer is always, yes. Everywhere is haunted.
Right.
Everywhere is haunted. We live in a very old world.
Right.
Everywhere is haunted.
Mm-hmm.
And things can come in and go all the time. And even a smudging and salt, it's all temporary. You have to maintain it
Okay.
in order for it to... I mean, honestly, anytime I have even people over at my house, I typically will smudge and salt just to refresh the energy in our home.
Yeah.
And I'm careful with items that I bring into our house.
Mm-hmm.
I am notorious for going to garage sales and thrift stores. I absolutely think that I've inadvertently brought some stowaways with some items that I brought into our home.
Hopefully you wouldn't go into any garage sale from Ed and Lorraine Warren or something.
That's true.
If Ed and Lorraine Warren are hosting a garage sale, don't buy anything
Yes,
from
don't
them.
buy
Just
anything.
Probably a good idea. I know we've got to wrap up here, and we could spend all day talking about this. In all of these experiences, probably the last question that I've got here, has there ever been a place or a sense that you have felt danger from these spirits, or is it something that you sort of find peace of who they are and what they are?
There is a whole range of entities. And I know there are experts out there. I'm not an expert on this subject. I'm just someone who has had experiences.
Sure.
I've read a lot of books. I love watching the spooky shows. And sometimes I agree with what they say. Sometimes I completely disagree with what they say. And especially when they're giving advice to homeowners.
Sure.
I always feel like, no, that is your home. You don't move, don't leave, don't let this stuff run you out. Just know how to deal with it. There really is a whole range of entities out there. You have the human, the non-human, you have the angelic, and you have the demonic, and you have animal. I've definitely been in situations where I've seen cats and dogs. Absolutely. I've seen them in my home. I've seen them around other people. So again, the energy goes on and it's still out there and it's still around you. As far as being in danger, yes.
Oh.
Yes. And I've had very threatening dreams. I call them influenced dreams.
Okay.
When you know that a dream is more than a dream,
Mm-hmm.
when you wake up and you still feel a presence in your room, yes.
Wow.
I absolutely feel that things can try to influence our thoughts and influence our behaviors. And it's not that it's a danger that it's going to run up and punch you in the face. That is not how things like this work. But it can be a danger that it can influence your thoughts, and you can have negative thoughts. There are definitely times where I will have thoughts and images that I'm feeling in my head that I know are not coming from me. I know I'm being influenced by something. And that's when I will say a little prayer. I will do a smudging, and I feel like that cleanses that away.
Yeah. Last, I said that was my last. Now this is my real last question, because I know we're running out of time. If someone out there is watching this or listening to it, and maybe they have had similar experiences, but they don't have that lifetime of understanding this relationship with the spiritual world, or, the beyond what we can see, what advice would you give to someone that maybe, do I have this? Do we question it? Is there any sort of books, any sort of thing that you can direct them to, or any sort of attitude to maybe bring to the table with that idea?
I mean, if someone is being scared by something in their home, they need to know that it is their home and their space. You absolutely don't need to relinquish your control or your authority. And so it is your home and your space at this time. And when I'm perceiving something in my home that shouldn't be there, I mean, I will feel the goosebumps on my arms, and I can even sort of pinpoint where it even is in my house. And I just demand that it get out, that only positive energy is allowed in my home. And so don't relinquish your control, because you are stronger than these things. And so take ownership.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just fascinating. Like I said, Darla, we could spend all day talking about these. This is really fascinating. Yeah. We'll probably bring you back down the road for, like a Darla 2.0 conversation to get more stories. But in the meantime, thank you so much for coming in. Thank you for sharing your heart and sharing, some very intimate details of your life. And we will revisit this, because as you said, you've got books full of stories.
I do. I've had a lot of interesting happenings. So.
Yeah. So this definitely warrants, a part 2, part 3, maybe. This will become the Friday the 13th of New Mexico Strange, where there's volume 7 and 8 down the road. Darla, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chad, for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you guys for watching. If you want more information, or you want other episodes of New Mexico Strange or any of the other KRQE digital media, just head over to krqe.com and make sure that you have KRQE Now on your smart TV or your Roku, your Fire Stick, however you're streaming your service. Until next time, I'm Chad Brummett. This has been New Mexico Strange.